Ready?
Reddit, among other platforms on the internet, are home to tons of first-hand accounts and stories, most of which are unverifiable. Having a degree of anonymity grants people a certain level of comfort that makes them much more likely to share things that they would otherwise keep to themselves. It certainly is true that people love to talk, and certain people love to talk for attention, but sometimes it's hard to determine the motive behind a certain post.
Usually
As
just
an
attention.
onlooker, a healthy amount of skepticism can be useful when determining whether or not a Reddit thread is worth your time, but occasionally, one such circumstance can leave you questioning just how real a post is.
Those glasses are not real. Look at those things. Those are clearly fake crap glasses that people have just to look pretty.
Just to clarify, though, Reddit is absolutely
I love my
no
gunners, I
stranger
really
to
do.
trolling and instances of elaborate fiction.
Confession
But in this
monk
case
call.
today, this mystery doesn't seem to add up in the way of fiction. In today's video, we're going to take a look at one such Redditor who seems to have shared a bit too much information about their past.
A Redditor's Dark Confessions. I'm sure Normie's reason here.
On January 21st, 2016, a post on Ask Reddit would gain quite a bit of attention. It was aptly titled, "To those who have accidentally killed someone, what went wrong?" This
fuck?
Reddit thread got over 6,800 upvotes and over 10,000 comments, and the most notable is from a now deleted Reddit user, whom, after posting this comment, almost immediately deleted their account. This post in question read the following. This still haunts me to this day. As kids, we had a hideout in this dirt cliff/cove. This is the best approximation I can find on Google. Only 3 times taller and probably about 10 times as wide. There was a neighborhood kid who, in hindsight, was probably mentally handicapped in some way. But to us, he was just the weird, creepy kid. This was the 80s, and we weren't exactly raised PC. 3 of us were headed to our base, and we found the creepy kid sitting at the top of our guard chair. We yelled at him to get out, and he said something like, "Make me," and started lobbing dirt clods and sticks down at us. We all ran around the side to make our way up. It gets pretty fuzzy here, but all I remember is he fell. I still remember the sound. When we got back down to check on him, he was in a very awkward position, with blood coming out of his mouth.
Holy fuck.
We all just freaked out and ran home. And as far as I know, no one has ever spoke a word of this to anyone. We didn't go back for over a month and never said a word of it between us.
Yo!
Again, this was the 80s, so media wasn't like today. Chances are it got a small article in the newspaper B section, like something like, "Missing mentally disabled child found dead after fall," or something like that. In case you were
Thank you
wondering
for the
what
host,
the
buddy.
photo
Solo
was that
Double
was
J.
linked in the original post, I will
Smite.
show it here. It just seems to show a cliff with a dirt trail in a somewhat rural area. However, it does not give away too many details for the average onlooker. What sparks this entire controversy is from a comment from the username AD33BBF9 when they chimed in. This user, well, I have to paraphrase here, essentially asked the original poster if this story was about Scott Cleeschulte.
What?
Interestingly enough, thereafter, the original poster goes on to delete their entire account. If we take a moment to Google Scott Cleeshulte's case, we get a very disturbing account of events surrounding his disappearance. According to VT.co, on August 6, 1988, 9-year-old Scott Allen Cleeschulte vanished. It was the last day of school for pupils at Coverdale Elementary School. Cleeschulte had just completed the 1st grade. Owing to his learning difficulties, he came home from school to change his clothes, then wandered off into the nearby woods to play. He was last seen around 4:30 p.m. in his hometown of St. Charles, Missouri, walking down Ken Drive towards West Adams
What
from his
the
family house on Laverence Drive. Sometime after leaving, a violent storm appeared over St. Charles, drenching the area in wind and rain. Cleeschulte was never seen again. The boy's disappearance sparked a massive search effort. Bloodhounds tracked Cleeshulte's path for 5 miles northeast before the dogs lost his scent. Police searched tunnels and caves in the area and the drenched nearby streams and creeks in an effort to locate the body. However, nothing was found. Something to note here is that a large storm occurred directly after this boy went missing, which would directly explain why an individual child's body was never found. People are still searching for this boy to this day. There hasn't ever been any closure in this case. In addition to that, there has been a Nancy Grace profile featuring the brother doing an interview. Let's take a look.
As far as I know, family and friends would have been my older sister Stacy before she had left for work and stuff, and she was there when
Damn.
he had come home and changed after school and that. So, as far as I know, it was Stacy.
And what did Stacy see?
He was, the last time she had seen him, he was at the top of the hill just playing, running around, being a kid like we did. You know, I know people say not to play in the streets, but that's where we played, up at the top of the street.
Didn't he say he was
That's
on a
where he
hill?
was.
And this was a fairly urban but rural area, too. You were sort of out in the country, right, where kids just could feel free to play?
Yeah, it was a neighborhood. I mean, it was a neighborhood full of 100 kids probably in the neighborhood, but, you know, right 5 minutes from our house was nothing. Farmlands and fields and dirt trails and stuff like that.
How
That's the
violent
best
was
shit.
that storm late afternoon? And did you think your brother had just hidden to have cover?
Yeah, it was a pretty bad storm. You know, it just came and went pretty quick. You know, I don't think he hid necessarily, like hid somewhere.
What?
We just assumed that he was in.
How does a storm kill a kid, which is just rain? I don't understand how they think their idea is he vanished before the thunderstorm, and but like they think like
Inside someone's house, you know, playing inside with another friend. You know, and that's just kind of then started knocking on doors.
oh the kid
on
died
every
and the
door
storm washed him
we
away.
could.
When did
How?
your parents finally call police?
It was later in the evening. I can't, you know, I'm not for sure on the time. 8, somewhere around there. It was, you know, before it had gotten dark.
And I understand they came right out.
Oh, so there's a cliff, and he was on a cliff, and they were all playing, and the kid was throwing mud, which the kid gets thrown off, falls, gets bloody. Then the kids probably either like they said they didn't know where he did, and then the rain probably took the kid's body and ran away. They ate him. Oh.
Yeah, they were there right away, yes.
So what did they do that evening and the next day and the next few days and the next week?
That night, I'm not, you know, it's pretty vague for me because I was young, so that night, you know, I can't remember exactly what they did.
Jesus.
But that next morning was full-fledged. They had a search party set up with dogs and helicopters and horsebacks and you name it, you know, anything.
Now let's try and take a look at a map and piece together this situation from a Reddit thread and create a hypothesis.
I just did that, but whatever.
From another source in this case, we can see exactly where Scott was last spotted by a neighbor. Scott was last seen not far from his home in the 3300 block of Leverance Drive, near a wooded area known as the Trails. It was just before a fierce thunderstorm swept through the area. As long as 6 weeks after his disappearance, police conducted large-scale searches of the area near Scott's home. The searches involved digging at a labyrinth of caves in the wooded hillside where Scott was known to play with the other neighborhood children. If we take a look at where this kid was last spotted, it doesn't make much sense as the area of the land has been developed since the 1980s. One user on another Reddit thread named Paramecia Antic posted the following. The location that is now Fox Hill Park in St. Charles had dirt trails and several steep gorges cutting through it in the 1990s. It's a little over a mile by foot from the last sighting of Scott Cleaschulte. Route I-370 wasn't built then, so it was accessible by foot.
Shit.
Today, it has been graded somewhat and has stormwater management areas, but you can still see the cliffs that remain. A deep ravine is seen directly in the direction as the child was walking, which seems to put forth a reliable location as to where this child could have fallen, which makes this entire story seem much more believable. The only thing I will say that seems to contradict this, though, is the fact that this boy's scent was followed for 5 miles where this location was only 1 mile away. Now, I want to also point out another lead regarding this case that dates all the way back to 2007, but it's weak to say the least. According to VT.co, the last fresh lead in this case was in 2007 when investigators began looking into Michael Devlin for a possible involvement in several missing children cases.
Well, Chad, I mean, I'm just going to say, my friend, right, he got searched by a dog. His car got searched by a dog, and he had weed. And he hid it in his glove dispenser, behind the glove dispenser, right? And the dogs never found it. So, I'm not saying dogs suck. My friend definitely does suck because he was killing people with what he was possessing. But what I'm trying to get at, dogs sometimes don't always pick up the scents, right?
including the 1991 disappearance of Charles Arlen Henderson and the 2005 disappearance of Bianca
Snitch.
Piper after Sean
Try to find my
Thornbeck,
Reddit post, buddy. See
a
what
15-year-old boy who disappeared in 2002, and William Ownby, a 13-year-old boy who was abducted in 2007, were discovered to have been held captive in Devlin's house. Devlin ultimately pled guilty to charges of kidnapping and child molestation and was sentenced to life in prison. Despite repeated interrogations by a special task force, no evidence was found implicating Devlin in the disappearance of Scott Cleashalty.
Holy fuck.
I can't understand why Michael Devlin would be seen as a lead regarding Scott if he had already been sentenced to life in prison. If no evidence was found linking him together, why is this seen as a likely lead on the internet? It doesn't make sense in my opinion. In conclusion, I see the events surrounding this to be incredibly specific. All the details surrounding the initial post to the now deleted Reddit account all point to this specific case, almost down to every detail. The only thing that seems out of place are the location of the body, which was never turned up, and the scent going on for 5 miles. However, both of these things seem to be explained away pretty perfectly by the large torrential storm. Here is an excerpt from a website regarding training dogs to track scents after rain. It reads the following. People wonder if dogs can track in rain, and the answer is yes. Rain will wet the scent and refresh it, but a big storm with torrents of rain will ruin the scent trail, as will heavy winds.
True.
Also, if an extensive search was done, then something must have turned up. However, I will say that it wouldn't be the first time a search for a missing person has overlooked something. Now, with the years gone by, it's almost impossible to locate any remains, even if they are buried underneath the now developed area. If this account is true, and they're not just trolling with specific details to this case, then this is really disturbing. This family has been looking for their child and trying to gain some kind of closure for over 30 years. And to think that someone has this stored in the back of their memory is really unnerving. I honestly doubt, though, that someone's going to come forth at this point. And seeing how long ago this was, launching a full-scale investigation is next to impossible, especially with the date being so far in the past. For now, though, assuming this is true, or there is some merit to this post, this may be the best explanation to what happened to Scott Cleashalty.
Can't Reddit,
This is
like,
very
just
social.
find the guy's account
Have a
and
good
just
night.
get him arrested? You also know what I realized, chat? I just realized something. This guy has the same job I do. He just goes through Reddit and mimics everything and just talks about Reddit posts and then talks. That's his job. This dude and I literally have the same job. He's just on YouTube. Isn't that crazy? It's beautiful. It's beautiful.